You're tuned into the Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Zeno Pucks. Here are your hosts, Andy and Brian Matusi.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast. We are once again live because we have another guest worth having everybody see. As always, Brian's with me. I'm Andy Matusi. And as always, the show is presented by Zeno Pucks. Before we get started, I just want to take a moment real quick to say Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there, but most importantly to ours, who I know is watching the show. Brian, what's up, man?
Just my internet giving me hell, like usual when we want to go live.
Sounds about right. Well, before the internet screws us over, I say we get started and bring our guest in here. Our guest today, we've been advertising it all week. He's former NHL forward. He played for the Nashville Predators, the Detroit Red Wings, the Boston Bruins, and the Anaheim Ducks. Since his retirement, he is currently a pro scout for the Minnesota Wild, an active member of the Boston Bruins Alumni Association, and he is also an ambassador for the Warrior for Life Fund. We are thrilled to introduce and welcome to the show, Mark Mowers. What's going on, man?
How we doing?
We're great, man. This is awesome. We've been looking forward to this.
It's an honor to be your first ex-retired NHL player.
Oh, man, we are over the moon. Brian's so over the moon, his internet's already lagging out. So, all right. So I guess first things first. I just want to get started. I don't want to bombard you with questions right off the bat, so maybe I'll let you speak on your resume yourself a little bit so I don't butcher it. I think that's only fair to you. So if you want to start where you when you entered the league, or you can start before that, when you actually started playing hockey.
Yeah, I don't want to take up too much time, I guess, because every player has a long, crazy path to how it all works out. But I grew up in upstate New York and played normal youth hockey and played regular high school hockey and graduated public high school hockey and thought I was just going to go to a 2-year school up in Canton, New York, and things kind of sprung from there, where I got invited to a couple camps, and here and there I ended up in Saginaw, Michigan, playing in the North American Hockey League, which now is a major junior league team, but back then it was a tier 2 team. And that was really kind of the year that I guess put me on the map as far as someone that could keep playing at higher levels. And so Dubuque came calling at the end of that year in the USHL, and I was like, yeah, why not? They just won the championship in the USHL the year before. I was like, this is a really good team, and the USHL is supposed to be better than the North American League, at least at that time. So I jumped over to Dubuque, had another, step forward, scored 50 goals or something like that. And before I knew it, colleges were calling, and I was going on college visits, and ended up at the University of New Hampshire, and kind of a similar story there. Played 4 years, and every year I kind of got a little bit better. And I'd say at the end of my junior year, I still was in the mode of not thinking about pro hockey or playing in the NHL. It wasn't even I was never one of those guys that laid in bed dreaming that I was going to be in. It just wasn't me. I just loved the game, and I wanted to play as long as I could, and as a good player and have fun and this and that. So, an agent or two called me at the end of my junior year, and I was like, wow, this is strange. I got agents calling. Maybe there is a chance that, I could play after college. And then my senior year, I signed on with an agent. And when that year ended, had a couple teams, Nashville and Edmonton were the most interested in signing. And I decided to choose Nashville. It was a expansion team, and I thought this was a good fit. And I didn't love country music at the time, but it didn't take long before I did fall in love with it. But so yeah, that was kind of the path to how the NHL career kind of started.
Man, that's incredible. So it's more exciting than my life. So Brian, you all right over there, man?
Yeah, I'm just I'm getting through it.
All right, I'm just making sure you're good.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
I'm
If you see me drop off, then we'll have some concerns. But I am here, just struggling. For
okay.
those of you listening
I
on audio, I have had nothing but internet issues. So camera feed is going to be when it wants to cooperate.
All right.
I just met you guys, so I won't start jabbing you about that it's
I was gonna
2024
say,
and you still have an internet
I
issue.
know
Yeah.
it's like I'm using dial up or something. I don't know what the hell. I pay
Well,
Spectrum all this money every month just to get nothing out of it.
well, I was gonna say I didn't want to mention them by name, but there's a reason it rhymes with rectum. So
There you go.
they're garbage, man. It's pretty bad. So I guess ultimately what I wanted to ask you, I have one question already from one of my buddies. He was dying for me to ask you. I went over this during the show, or before the show, I should say. But he was adamant that I ask you right away as to not forget. So like I mentioned before we brought you in, you played for 4 different NHL teams. He wants to know which team was your favorite of all of those.
All right. So it's a tough question just because Nashville was great because it was my first team and it was a new team and the city started buzzing. I was there for parts of 4 years and then signed on with Detroit. I was part of their organization for a few years. I went to Boston for a year and a little bit. So, and Boston was great because it was kind of like going home, playing at the University of New Hampshire. And
yes,
I married a Massachusetts girl, so I was kind of home now. So that was also obviously a thrill to be able to play in front of people every night that I knew and my old coaches and whatnot. And then I played in Anaheim, but just for a few months. So like it was awesome. Once again, played with some great players, but it was such a short stint. So they're automatically out of the picture. They're not they wouldn't be up there. But the answer to the question in short is the Detroit Red Wings.
Oh man,
it's just like I said, all 3 were special. But if you look at the rosters, first of all, that I got to play with, some of those guys, I mean, there had to be at least. I mean, over the 2 years that I was with the team, I'd say at least 12 or 14 that are Hall of Famers. And
I'll say you were on the team with Datsuk, right?
Yeah,
Datsuk and Zetterberg. I mean,
Gosh,
it's crazy. Lidstrom and Yzerman and Curtis Joseph, and you could go on and on if you pull up the 2003, 2004, and then we had the lockout. So it was the year after 05, 06. The guys I got to play with, not only learn from, but just experience being on the ice with them at practice every day. It was just I just can't pick the other 2 over them. And an original 6 team as well, and just so much history there. And that's the answer to the question.
I know there's 2 people specifically that are watching this show right now, and they're one of our sponsors for one of the segments on the show. But the Lighting Boys are huge Detroit Red Wings fans, so I know they are over the moon to hear you say that. And I can't blame you. That's probably one of the best lineups in the history of the NHL.
Yeah, I mean, we won the President's Trophy both years that I was there, and man, it was I thought I was going to win a
cup.
ring, sure. Like it was like there's no way we weren't. The first year we got beat by Calgary, or Edmonton. I can't remember which year was which, but when one was in the first round, one was the second round. But I was crushed. I was like, oh, how's this happening? Maltby, we had Maltby, Draper, McCarty, like just we had the perfect teams.
Yeah. I mean, those were some of the most terrifying teams that have ever played the game. Yeah. And I mean, the Red Wings, they were a dynasty for all those years. I mean, that playoff streak was just absolutely insane. And for you to have been a part of it, and for me to even be sitting here talking to you is insane to me in and of itself. Yeah.
I was going to say, I keep listening like it's his show. Like I keep listening to him like, ooh, tell me more stories. I don't even know what to say.
Yeah. This is glorified campfire stories right here.
Yeah, more guys pop up as I'm thinking about it, like Chelios is on the team. Brett Hull is on the team. Matthew Schneider. Who was it? Lang was on the team. Like we just had, I don't know. It's just crazy.
I'm gonna have to get off of here. I'm about to have a panic attack. This is insane. Oh man, this is incredible. And it's just so cool to sit here and talk to somebody who was actually there for all of that. I gotta say, I wish I had my buddy in here who's a Red Wings fan, because he'd be absolutely eating this up. So
I will say this: one of the I don't want to keep cutting you off, but
no, you're good.
One of the difficult parts of playing there, though, was that I was kind of in awe a lot, like especially early on when I, first got, because the first year I signed there, I was in Grand Rapids actually the whole year.
Yes,
played there the whole year. We had a good run. I didn't get one game, but I think I had a 2-year deal. But anyway, the next year, after I think it was 3 or 4 weeks in Grand Rapids, I got the call, and like I remember the beginning, it was just like, wow, like I'm just sitting in this room, and I had to like snap out of it though, because I'm in the NHL. I need to. This is my chance again to prove that I could be a regular and whatnot. And I'm looking across, the locker room, and Stevie Y's tying up his skates, and Shanahan, he's another one who was on the team.
Yeah,
he's to my right, and you had to I had to pinch myself, basically to be like, all right, stop it, like you got to belong, or you're going to be back in Grand Rapids. You know what I mean? So it was interesting, and just those first 2 weeks, especially, I remember like making passes to him and all, on the ice. It was just it was a surreal thing.
Very much like imposter syndrome. I'm
like, I got to get out of this and start playing the game. So.
See, I wouldn't have been able to do it. I would not have been able to focus. All those big names around you is just, that's got to be overwhelming, especially, I'm sure in the moment of the game that all kind of goes away.
Yeah.
Because, you're focused on winning at that point. But that is absolutely insane. So I have to ask you, and again, this was another question that somebody wanted me to ask you. How electric was it playing when you were in Nashville? And it's pretty insane nowadays. So I think this is a tough comparison to make, especially since you were in the expansion years for Nashville. But was it as loud there as everybody says it is now?
It's definitely, I would say it's definitely louder now. And I think the main reason is that people know what's going on now. Right. So they're more educated. And I tell this story when people ask about Nashville, and it was great. Don't get me wrong. It was, they were great. It was sold out, and, we were competitive, but we weren't great. They knew we weren't going to be making the playoffs and whatever. But what I tell people all the time is that first, I don't know, I'd say the first 3 years or so, they would have definitions on the scoreboard above you. Like, so if someone iced the puck and the whistle went, you would look, if you're on the bench, you look up, they have the definition of icing on the scoreboards, because the fans, 90% of them had no clue what it was. So it was just a big educational thing for the games. Obviously they're excited because it's fast and people are hitting each other and fighting and all this stuff, but they didn't know what was going on. So they were cheering at different times, and so it was really unique. And that they were actually teaching them the game during the season, but anyway, to answer the question, really they are much louder now, just because they know what's going on and they have these chants, and now I think, I don't know which whistle it is, if it's the third period or it's a TV timeout, but they stand the entire TV timeout, and for 2.5 minutes or whatever it is, they give a standing ovation to the team the whole time. And it's amazing.
Oh yeah.
It's amazing.
We should know that. We were just there in March too. And it was loud. One other thing I should add to the noise level for the Bridgestone Arena is that I don't remember if it was last year or the year before, but every team has a goal horn. And the Predators specifically, their goal horn is a set of 5 horns. Well, they decided to add another set of 5 horns. So now every time they score a goal, it sounds like the roof's going to blow off the building because it's that loud. Yeah. And with the crowd going wild, though, it's not as bad as you would expect it to be, but it's pretty insane in there. And it's
you can feel it shake your organs for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's loud.
That's how Vegas is probably, I've never played there, obviously, but scouting there, the building is shaking. It's literally vibrating, the whole thing.
Yeah. That's what I hear.
Unbelievable job.
I was gonna say that's got to be I haven't made it out there for a game yet, but that's got to be a damn good place to watch a hockey game if you're a fan.
That's right.
And I mean, I know there's so many people, mostly fans of other teams right now, that are so angry at Vegas and you're abusing the cap space and all this. And no, you're not. And they're out in the first round anyway, so it didn't matter. Like,
hey, if you're not breaking the rules,
yeah. Well, that's one thing we harp on is, they're not breaking the rules. It's just a loophole in the system. And every team in the league had the opportunity to take advantage of this. So, I mean, you could call it cheating, you can call it whatever you want. At the end of the day, they still got eliminated in the first round. So you can complain about it all you want, but it didn't end up having any effect anyway.
Right.
So, now one thing I want to ask you, and you mentioned that you get asked this a lot, and I don't want to go into too much detail with it, but I have to. I have to ask Mike Babcock. I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention his name.
Yeah.
I'm not asking you to praise him or bash him. I gotta know.
You just know that he was my coach one year.
Yes. And I just got it as for somebody who played for him. I mean, he's regarded as one of the best coaches ever from the outside looking in. I just want to know what it's like to play under a guy like that.
Oh boy.
He didn't kick you on the bench, did he?
Well, he just added fuel to the fire too, because he just said from the outside he's regarded as one of the best coaches ever. And let's just start there real quick.
Yeah.
And once again, I am still in the business scouting with Minnesota. So whatever. I'm not, this isn't about burning bridges or whatever, but I still don't want to go too
no, yeah, absolutely.
But I will say this, and I had him as a coach for 1 year, and I didn't think he was a genius. I really didn't. I mean, I'm not saying he was a terrible coach. I'm not saying he was a terrible X's and O's guy, but I don't think he was a genius having him as a player. Now, on top of that, I mean, what I always ask people, and you're going to find out, whoever's watching this or who will watch is going to find out, I'm not exactly a fan of his, but if you go back and look at his years as coach, whether it was in Detroit or Toronto, and he coached Anaheim, I believe, for a little bit there. But correct me if I'm wrong, he had some pretty good teams, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He had some really excellent teams, which I think played into the whole one of the best coaches of all time thing.
Okay, so how many Stanley Cups did he win?
1.
0. No.
Yeah. 1. Yeah.
Was it 1?
One.
Yep.
One with Detroit.
Yeah, 2008.
Yeah. Yep, I'm stupid. I forgot.
No, that's fine. I hate to, I'm not supposed to be giving you trivia questions here, but
well, I was thinking back to 2002. I totally forgot about 2008, and I'm like, wait a minute. No, he didn't. Okay.
So listen, he did have success, and he got teams to the playoffs and passed around, but he won 1 Stanley Cup, and everybody raves about the Olympic thing where he won the gold medal. I mean, I'm sorry, but
nothing but a team of Hall of Famers,
Yeah, like Andy and Brian, you guys could have been the coaches, in my opinion, and had as good a chance of winning the Olympics with that team that he had. So I don't know. I think he's an overrated, once again, I'm not saying he's a terrible coach. I'm not. I don't think he's a great person. And you've heard all the stories about him. And
I was going to say, the kicking players on the bench, wanting to look through his players' phones. We've heard it.
Yeah, that all happened this year. And so what? I just don't want this to come out and me saying that he's a terrible coach. I don't think he's a terrible coach. But I don't think he's a great coach. And I think the perception of him is way off. I just do. He didn't. Well, if he would have won 3 cups, 4 cups, or whatever, then that's fine. Then you're like, okay, he gets the best out of his players, no matter how he does it. Whatever, his antics or his tactics of how he beats people down, wink, wink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
oh, man.
So anyway, that's just my whole take on him. And no, I'm not a fan. And as much as that, answering that question to you earlier about my favorite team that I play with, the first year he was not there as the coach. The second year that I was there, he was. And I'll leave you at this, but because of this man, I almost quit the game.
Really?
Yeah. So we don't need to get into,
no, we don't, not at all,
or whatever. But yeah, he was pretty ruthless with me, and with others as well. But yeah, it was pretty bad. So.
Well, and like I said, not trying to put you on the spot or anything, but I was like, I knew you played for him. I was like, I can't not ask. And I should point out before you said any of that, Brian and I are aware of the true Mike Babcock.
Yeah.
But to just the casual fan looking in, everyone's like, oh, Mike Babcock, one of the greatest coaches of all time. Well, and like you said, having the teams that he had play under him, having those players, and he only won one cup, it's just like,
yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's easy to win cups, but at the same time, Scotty Bowman was another one. A lot of players didn't. I'm not comparing him to Mike Babcock and how he treated players or whatever. I don't really know because I never played for Scotty, but I talked to other players that kind of mentioned, the mind games and this and that, and all he did, but at the end of the day, he won a bunch of cups. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's like you got to the respect factor is way up there for me just because he finished the job. So
right.
Anyway, yeah, I mean, the older I get, because of how poorly he treated me, like I'm just like kind of sick of like staying quiet too. It's like people should know, like people really should know that he was not a good human being.
Absolutely. And like I said, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but for the hockey world as a whole to kind of get a glimpse into it. Because I mean, a lot of stuff that you hear on the outside doing research is speculation or assumptions made by NHL insiders. So you don't want to, I feel it's better for them to hear it from a player.
And listen, some people listening might be like, oh, Mark, he's probably just soft. He can't handle that. Like, it's not. I'm old school. It's not the way kids are treated now, and they can't handle anything. And I get all that. There has to be some tough love, but it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that at all. So,
right. No, and like I said, I'm not doubting or disagreeing with anything you've said, because like I said, Brian and I are. To say we're obsessed with hockey is a super massive understatement. Like we love this sport so much that it's unhealthy. So I mean, we're just full of useless hockey knowledge too. Especially Brian. Brian went to school for broadcasting as well. So he has a degree in that. But
you know what? Like, you know what? You're in your early 30s, both of you, I think, right?
I am. Brian's 28.
Oh, sorry, Brian. But no, but you know what's great about you saying that though is you guys have a passion for something and you're running with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So later in life, you're not going to regret this, no matter what it is. You know what I mean? You think it's useless hockey stuff, but you know what? You guys love it.
Oh yeah.
You should keep running with it, I think.
And that's the thing too. I mean, that's another reason we wanted to get a player on the show, was because Brian and I, the reason we started this podcast is Brian and I, living in two separate states, we usually talk to each other every single day and spend a good probably hour talking about hockey with each other. And so we were like, why are we not doing a podcast? Even if nobody listens to us, at least we're putting it somewhere.
Yeah.
So, at least we can go back and look at things we said too in the past. But I mean, we're very fortunate that it's been like 4.5 months we've been doing this show. It's gone about 3.5 months, I should say, because we started at the end of January. It's gone as well as it has. I mean, we're getting good views on it. We picked up sponsors and getting some pretty cool guests. So
it's awesome.
It's pretty great. Now I have to ask you, when you were in Boston, did you, how do we put this? Trying to figure, was the energy, do you feel that the energy in Boston was higher or lower than other places you've played as far as the crowd?
Man, it's hard. It's hard now because I've scouted there so many games. So when you're a player,
comparing it to now,
So and when you're a player, like you're just it's loud. Every building has got good energy and loud. You know what I mean? So it's hard to say now. I mean, the easy answer for this is that we that year was 06, 07, I believe. We weren't very good.
Yeah, correct.
We were at the beginning of this I don't want to call it a rebuild necessary, but like we had 11 new players. Like Chara just came over. Mark Savard just came over. Phil Kessel was a rookie. Patrice Bergeron was a sophomore or whatever you want to call him. So
yeah,
it was a tough year. We scratched and clawed until like New Year's, and then it was kind of a downward spiral. So obviously the energy was not as good as it is now, or when they have been good since, they've been good for a while now, if you think about it.
Oh yeah, they have. And
so it was a different feel, only because I was on the ice, but I know for a fact that it wasn't as good as it is now, just because we just weren't as good.
That makes sense. I just had to ask. I'm a Bruins fan, and I'm just like, I gotta know. And I mean, I know you played with Bergeron. I know you played with Chara.
Yeah.
And which is absolutely insane to me, because I mean, those two guys right there, when someone says the word Boston Bruins, I mean, those are the two faces that I think most people picture nowadays. Are those two guys. I mean, you could also say Bobby Orr, Ray Bork, guys like that. But as far as modern players, I mean, Patrice Bergeron, first ballot Hall of Famer, no question. Probably best two-way forward to ever play the game. The fact that you've played with him was, I didn't even stop and consider that before I asked that question.
Well, you said he played for the Bruins. I looked to see when he played.
Well, I knew when he played. I was just like, it just.
But what's crazy about that, and I got to be completely honest, and this is not Patrice is an awesome guy. Like, he's awesome. There's nothing wrong. Not one thing you could say bad about him. I don't know if he's I don't think he's ever sworn. I don't know if you know.
Really?
No, I don't know. I'm not going to say that for sure, but he's that nice of a guy. Like, he truly is. But that year when I went in there, I got to be completely honest. Like, he was not, you know what I mean? Like, he was just I'm not going to, I don't want to even, this is the wrong word, like an afterthought. That's not the right word, because he was, I know he was a prospect that they really believed in, and he was going to be a good player. He
wasn't the Patrice Bergeron at the time.
Right. Like, he was a second-year pro when I was there, and he was, I don't know if he was playing middle six or where. I don't even remember where he was playing. Top six, I don't know. But it wasn't like he was a wow factor most games. He just went out there, did his job, and, and to think, like, for me, when I name names from that team, I was like, he's usually not one that comes up, because he kind of slid in slowly, and then before you know it, he's like winning Selkies every year. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of a strange thing. But obviously, I'm proud to say I got to play with him. You know what I mean? So just another name on the list of Hall of Famers that I got.
I was gonna say, you've played with some absolutely incredible names.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of the best people to ever lace up hockey skates, and you've shared the ice with them. That's just that's incredible. I mean, I just got goosebumps saying that.
Yeah, maybe I still don't even, like, I don't know, it's weird. Like, I hope one day I can just sit down with old programs and go through them and be like, wow, that was really cool, but it's just like, it's over in a blink of an eye, and then you're moving on to, you're like, well, I got to do something now, and you start your next career, and you really don't have time to, I don't know, cherish, unless I'm on these, a podcast, something like this, where you kind of go through it. It's kind of, so just so you know, this is pretty cool for me too.
Oh yeah, man. It's always, that's the thing. It's always fun to sit down, talk hockey with the boys, no matter who you are or where you are.
Yeah.
It never gets old. And that's one thing we love about doing this.
Yeah.
Now correct me if I'm wrong. You retired officially in 2011, right?
You got it. Yep.
Okay. And then you are now a pro scout for the Minnesota Wild. Brian, I'm going to let you talk here soon. I was
going to say, Jesus fucking Christ.
I'm going to let you
like 5 questions. I'm like, God, I got like 3 or 4 I want to ask myself.
Well, I'm getting ready to bring you in here. So, part of it's because your screen's away. So I just forgot. Sorry. But I was going to say, being that you now work for the Minnesota Wild, I'm going to let Brian do some talking, because he is a Minnesota Wild fan. Additionally, I know he's going to want to speak on previous subjects as well. So,
shoot, Brian, shoot.
Well, my first thing is not so much about the team you work for, but just the job in general as a scout. I mean, obviously, you've mentioned that you've been into minor league facilities and NHL facilities as well. My big question is, you're going to all these different buildings on a week-to-week basis. How much are you in contact with your GM? In this case, it's Bill Guerin. How much are you in contact with management in general and saying, "Hey, this guy's looked really good. We could use him." How often are you talking with them?
So as far as talking to Billy Guerin or any GM, because this is my third organization I've worked with, but it's all been the same as far as that's concerned. As far as talking about a player, unless it's a big time deal, which I haven't been a part of too many of them. They haven't, just the timing's not right. And as you guys know, like big time deals just don't happen that often anymore with the cap and whatnot. But I probably talk to Billy once a year on a player. And,
oh, wow.
And I'll tell you why. It's not like, and I didn't know this either getting into this business, but GMs have so much going on. It's amazing. Like whether it's, financial stuff with the business side or talking to agents every day or, so that's why they delegate. And so they have either a director of player personnel or they have a head pro scout. And that's the guy that you talk to, every 3-4 days. Sometimes it can stretch out to a couple of weeks where you don't have much contact. But within that 2 weeks or 3-4 days, when you're watching these games, the next morning you get up and you write reports into the program on the games, and you kind of say what happened in the game, and then you maybe you'll write on 8 to 18 players. You write little game notes, how they did. Do you want them? Do you not want them? Where you're projecting them? Are they there? Are they trending up? Are they trending down? So all when you click on a player's box with that game, you have all that stuff you fill out. You hit synchronize, and it shoots it into the organization. So everybody that's in hockey ops, once they synchronize their computer, boom, they can see everything that happened from the night before.
I gotcha.
You know what I mean? So there's not a lot of communication verbally, but all the information's in there.
Okay, I gotcha. Now you work with a couple other pro scouts. The Wild famously have a really good amateur scout as well. Our director of amateur scouting, Judd Brackett, he's largely credited with bringing in the great European talents the Wild have. Do you, as a pro scout, speak with the amateur team very much at all, or is that not really a thing?
Yeah, for me, I do it not a lot, but occasionally when we're starting to target players on who we may or may not sign or want to trade for, which. Once again, 80 to 85% of the time, it never happens. It just doesn't. Okay. But you're always prepped and ready to go. But I do like calling the amateur guys occasionally, or at least Judd, because he's at the the top and he can get the information for me. But for mostly what I call on is the character stuff. Like compete level. Like, did this kid compete when he was 17, 18 in his draft years? Did he not? Have you heard anything? Is there anything bad about him? So I try to get that type of information, because as a pro scout, we go, we hit the elevator and we go up to the 9th floor, the 8th floor of all these buildings. And, we sit in scouts row. We don't talk to players. We don't, we just watch the game. We write our notes down and that, we hit the elevator, we go down, we go to the next rink. So it's, we don't get to talk to players or talk to anybody associated with these players most of the time. So we need to get information sometimes from within.
All right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've always been curious. Scouting really isn't something that gets talked about a lot. So I've always kind of had a lot of questions. And my first experience with a scout in person, I'll never forget. My wife and I were at a Milwaukee Admirals game, and we were in line. They were scanning tickets, and a scout walked by us and presented his pass to the lady taking tickets. And she just kind of froze up and was like, I don't know what this is. And the guy's like, I'm an NHL scout. And she let him in. And she's just like, she said to us, she's like, I don't know what that was all about. I'm like, the guy's a scout. And she's like, I don't know what that means. I'm like, okay, glad we did this. It was just hilarious. I'm like, God.
Now you're thinking, all I got to do is print up one of these things. And
yeah.
building.
I was just gonna say, I'm like, I might have just found a life hack, but I'm like, I mean, the guy looked legit. I mean, he had a bag and he had, he had his pass and he had his notepad. I'm like, it all looked legit. I just laughed. I'm like, God, scouts really kind of get the short end of the stick, I guess. Holy cow.
Yeah, well, most of the buildings, there's certain entrances with, press entrances, and that's where you're supposed to go in. And this lady was probably just doing tickets or something, and she was caught off guard.
Yeah.
And no one probably told her anything. So she was like, oh, I might as well. I probably have to. I don't want to, hurt the guy's feelings, so I'll let him.
Don't want to.
But normally they'll point you in the right direction, and then you gotta go through the proper security measures to get in.
Yeah. Well, maybe not at the UWM Panther Arena. I guess maybe it's different there.
Yeah, but, I guess not. But I always just thought that was interesting, and that was the first time I really thought. I'm like, man, I wonder what if scouts have to go through this on a daily basis. So I'm glad to know that there are proper channels you can go through where you don't have to like claw your way through a crowd to get in every game.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you really want all the details, what we do, or we do it ourselves. But some organizations do it. Do it for the scouts is in that same program that I was talking about with the computer. We have a schedule page, and you put your schedule in, every day on the boxes. So what I'll do is about a week before, I'll email all these contacts from the teams and let them know I'm coming. And you basically just request a credential. Okay. So when you show up, you show them your scouting pass. They have the credential all written out. Boom, go through security, and you're in the building. So that's kind of how it works. At the pro level. The amateur guys, I would say it's probably a little easier where they just show up with their card, their scouting card, and just get into those buildings. I mean, because they're in some cold youth hockey type buildings where they're not paying most of the time anyway, so it's not a big deal.
All right, I just have a follow-up question to that. Are you guys? And now I don't know, it could be different for every sport, but are you guys sitting in suites during these games, or where do you guys usually sit for this?
So we're basically at the NHL buildings. There's, it's like press row, they call it, and then they'll have like scouts row. So they'll have, I don't know, 8 or 10 scout seats. You sit right next to each other. So at most of these games, because I cover the East, and we haven't gotten into this yet, but you scout by territory. Mm-hmm. So I'm in the East. We got another guy in the Midwest. Got another guy out West. Okay. And I'll see the same scouts. There's 32 teams, so I'll see the same 40 scouts all season long. Now they're not in every game, obviously, but if there's a game on a Monday night and it's the only game, say it's in Washington, there could be like 25 scouts there because there's no other games, and you'll see, So it's kind of, to be honest, it's nice because we don't talk to anybody else. We sit up there, so it's kind of nice actually to just shoot the shit with the other scouts, and you try to the ones that'll give you information and the ones that won't. So you gotta so it's kind of fun in that sense because I can always tell when guys are asking me, they're trying to get some scoop on whatever, who we're gonna move and all this other stuff. But it's kind of a little game, scout within the scout,
trying to get the lowdown.
Yeah.
Now I got to ask you this, and this is more about the Wild because your GM, the GM of the team's Bill Guerin. You played when he was still playing in the league. Now, you played when he was kind of in the back nine of his career, but he was kind of notoriously a tough guy to play against. Do you have any memories about lining up against him?
I really don't, as far as playing, which is probably a good sign because it's a bad sign because I was probably on the fourth line and I never got on the ice when he was on the ice, but. But the good part is that I probably didn't get crushed by him either because there's no memories of me getting. Yeah, smoked.
He's a tough SOB on. He was a tough SOB on the ice. So I'm glad you don't have any memories of catching a stray elbow or getting slammed into the boards or anything.
Yeah, no, I don't. Thank God, because he was like the prototypical like power forward, right? Like not the greatest of skaters, but just big and heavy and strong, and he could fight. And obviously, we know he could score goals. So.
He still looks like a menace. I saw him in person at Wild opening night this past season, and I'm like, that is a big guy.
But I do remember this, not knowing, I didn't really know him that well. Then he's a U.S. guy. But during warmups and maybe a couple faceoffs, I was out against him. But I remember him always like tapping me on the shin pad and be like, "Hey, what's up, Mao?" Or what's up, Miles? And I was like, "Oh wow, Billy Guerin, he knows me." Like,
so American guys got to stick together.
Yeah, so I do recall that. So, but that's a good thing. Better that than getting crushed.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh man,
some of those guys. I mean, you did get to play. I mean, when people talk about golden eras of hockey, and I think the mid 2000s was kind of the sun setting on the super powerful power forward era. So you got to play against some really good bruisers, I'm sure. So I think that's pretty cool. I mean, now you have guys that skate, over 22 miles an hour on a regular basis. And so it's a little bit of a different game, but it's kind of cool. You got to go up against some of these really tough, insane players.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. But it's funny though, you say that now, it just triggered my brain, but I was like, maybe it's coming back a little, like, everybody was like speed, it's got to be this, that, but you're finding out especially when you watch these playoff games, like, look at this Brazeau kid that Boston had.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
He's in the East Coast League 2 years ago, and now he's playing in the NHL playoffs. And not only that, he's one of their better players, like a couple of the games. So it's like, maybe it will come back. I mean, the rules changing back in the late 2000s and stuff with the clutch and grab, and that kind of hurt that brand a little bit. But I don't know. I see now more, if you're smart and you're competitive, and even if you're not that fast, there's still a place for you. I mean, look at JVR with Boston. He's not a great skater, but he's still creating offense around the net. So who knows? Maybe it's coming back.
I gotta say too, as far as physicality goes too, and the game becoming, because the physicality of the sport has kind of died down significantly. However, this season, especially these playoffs, if you want a perfect example of it making its way back, you need to be watching this Bruins Panthers series right now. But it's been an extremely physical series, especially on the end of the Florida Panthers as well. Which has kind of caught me by surprise, because I've been watching both of these teams for years, and I've never seen it out of both of them at the same time. The Bruins, you expect it, but the Panthers have been very physical this year, and I mean, I think it's actually taking a toll on Boston. I mean, they're going to play tonight at 6:30, so I'll be watching that. The last two games of the series I missed because I was at Cleveland Monsters playoffs games. So I was just watching highlight reels on my phone for that.
Now, real quick, Andrew, I just want to interject. Did you guys see the Bennett hit on Marchand?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
So two things, and we'll talk about the hit itself in a second, but I do want a side note. Elliot Friedman just tweeted about 25 minutes ago, Brad Marchand will not play tonight's game.
Yeah, I saw that.
I saw that coming.
Now the hit itself, I mean, what did you guys think? A lot of people say it was a sucker punch. It happened really quick. It didn't look great if you watched it live. It really didn't look like, it didn't look like a clean hit. I wasn't super crazy about it, but I've certainly seen worse from Marchand himself even. But I just want to get your guys' thoughts. What did you think of that hit?
Well, I'm trying to be unbiased because I love Marshy, as you can see behind me. But to say it was a sucker punch would be, I think, a bit of an overstatement. It definitely wasn't a clean hit. But I wouldn't go as far to say as he got suckered. I think it's something the Department of Player Safety still needs to look into. And the Department of Player Safety, in and of itself, that name is an oxymoron. But I think it's something that should be looked into. And I know, like Brian said, we've seen way worse than that out of Marchand himself specifically. But this whole series is going to be that physical, and Sam Bennett is that type of player. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm curious to see what Mark has to say.
Yeah. So I watched it like 15 times, and I'm trying to really get a great look on his right hand, because that's what they're talking about, right? So
yes.
So for me, because there's no clear, I know it looks like his hand's coming over there, but his hand could have been coming over there to like protect himself, because it's Marchand. He knows Marchand's coming at him, so you don't know what you're going to get from him.
Right.
So I can't describe it as a dirty hit unless I really were to see a camera angle from the other side.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he doesn't wind up and like cock his fists back or anything.
Right.
My thought is that even though it wasn't necessarily a clean hit, it more looks like Bennett's getting, like you said, he's getting his hand up to either protect himself or just get more force into the hit so he can knock Marchand away, because you put this perfectly, is that you don't know what you're going to get with Marchand. You don't know if you're going to catch a leg sweep and a leg sweep or what you're going to get. And it sucks to stereotype a player like that, but he's kind of made his own bet in that regard.
Right. And so he's in Bennett. Hey, he's got history as well. Like he's been suspended and whatnot. And that's what makes him effective as well, but for me, I just can't, until I could see that camera angle from the other side, where if I see his right hand, like driving through his face, you know what I mean? Then I'm like, that was pretty dirty. You know what I mean? But the bottom line, there is no camera angle, and it's the playoffs. Right. And if you can get away with it, you get away with it. So it's playoff hockey, and you get it. It's survival, right? Like you're doing whatever it takes to survive. You're doing whatever it takes to beat the other team down. And in this case, because the camera angle, in my opinion, you just got to roll with it. You got to accept it. And it's unfortunate he's out of the game with probably what looks like a concussion.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a huge blow to a Boston team that is already down bad, like metaphorically speaking, to the Panthers. I mean, they're down 2-1 in the series. Florida's absolutely dominated them the last two games. I mean, I thought they played exceptionally well against Florida in the first game. But now going down, you're down 2-1 in the series, you're at home, and you have to get this win tonight at home, because otherwise you're going back to Florida down 3-1 in the series.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a tough look. And to lose your captain like that in such a pivotal game in the series is such a huge blow to the team. It has me concerned as a Bruins fan, but as a Panthers fan, I'm like, well, one of my teams is going to the Eastern Conference Final, so
So I do want to ask this. So on the play, I don't even believe on that Bennett hit, I don't even think he got a penalty for that hit, did he?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. No penalty. Yeah, no misconduct, no supplemental discipline. And so I do want to ask, and I know we touched on this before the show, there's no secret that the NHL has an officiating problem. Mark, as a former player, I have to know, we both have to know, what do you think of the officiating that we see, not only during the hockey season itself, but specifically the playoffs?
Oh, man.
Okay, so,
what? I just got to say, Brian, I could kiss you on the mouth for asking that question, man. All right. Go ahead, Mark.
So, listen, I give the refs, like, a lot of credit, because it is insanely fast down there and stuff happens. It's crazy. It is. I don't know how they do it. And that's where I'm going to get to my genius idea that I don't know if they'll ever implement, but I'll get to that in a second. But I do give them a lot of credit, because if you watch the game from up top, everything looks a little slower and this and that. But if you really watch, in the lower bowl or whatever, and you wonder sometimes why the ref on the outside, it's in the neutral zone, is making calls down in the corner, because the other ref, you're like, how did that guy, he miss it? And sometimes you're right, it's 5 feet from him and he just decided it wasn't a call. And there's things that aggravate you. But my whole issue with the NHL, and it is the NHL, because the AHL doesn't do it. But I'm gonna throw the offsides review to you, right? So they have you go offsides by 2 millimeters. They can review it and turn a goal around, right? But because they think it's so important to get everything perfect, they want the game perfect, right? With all these reviews, goalie interference, this and that, and which it's not perfect, because as you guys know, you're frustrated with whether it's goalie interference, whether it's a high stick. But there's all these things that are just so unclear. But they're so adamant about this offsides rule, which I can't stand. I can't stand it. I think it has no effect on the game if a guy's offsides by 3 inches. Like, it doesn't change anything. Like, unless the guy's really offsides by 3 feet and somehow they miss it, I think it wastes time. It takes the momentum away from the game, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, my point is, like, if they're going to do that, how do they not review everything to make the game perfect? And I do not want that. I do not want that. I want the opposite. I want reviews to go away minimally, minimal reviews or whatever. But I just don't get their mindset with refereeing and how they're so worried about 3 inches and they don't try to get everything else correct.
Yeah.
Right. So this leads to I guess my idea with the refereeing and trying to get it better, trying to get it more accurate, try to get it quicker, is take the referees off the ice and put them in a box or put them up on the 9th floor with a big TV next to them. I don't really care. Keep the linesmen on the ice because they got to drop the puck. They got to call offsides. They got to break up fights. But you can see everything from up top. So why?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, even if they make a mistake, like right now you're seeing they make mistakes and they're huddling up and then they're changing the calls because you know what I mean? They're who saw it, this and that. I'm telling you, you see everything up top and it takes 3-4 seconds. Like you could just tell. So anyways, that's my idea as far as like improving, you know, what's a penalty, what isn't a penalty, and just doing things faster, you know, because they go into the penalty box and they grab the iPad, they grab their little iPad and they're trying to find and I'm like, what are they doing? Like, this is the NHL. They got all this money and they're deciding on an iPad.
So to follow up on that, you made some good points with the offside thing. It does drive me nuts too. Now there have been several occasions where you get a backbreaking scored against you, or backbreaking goal scored against you, and 30 seconds later it's like, oh, they were offside. All right, that's gone. So sometimes it's to the fans' benefit, but
but you wouldn't know. You would never know.
Exactly. And so the problem with it is that the goal that started the offsides review and the whole review process thing was that Matt Duchene goal many years ago when he was like 20 feet offside and he scores a breakaway goal and everyone's like, how the fuck do you not call that?
No, so I know. I don't know where you draw the line as far as like a really bad offside, but you know, that's my other thing. Like, why not give the coaches the red flags like in football, and you get 2 challenges a game. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So if it was something that bad, and I don't know how you do it. I really don't. I just hate the flow. Like, you go to the American Hockey League games, and you guys know you go to them. They don't do it. They don't have there's no offside.
Yeah, they don't. That's exactly.
Yeah.
You don't worry about a goal going in. Now in the NHL, a goal goes in, and it's like you can't even really celebrate because maybe 30 seconds before I didn't drag my foot, and it's like, I don't know. I hate it, and it's just my opinion, but it's like.
I definitely agree with you about maybe moving the refs. I think they should keep a ref on the ice to explain rulings to the coaches on the bench, because we've seen how irate coaches get after a review or a call. I think you should leave one on the ice, but move the other one up and be an eye in the sky to call other penalties.
That's fair.
I think that would be perfectly fine. But I definitely think you're right. Is what they're doing now does not work, between missing calls and just being in the way in general. I feel like the last 3 seasons we've seen an uptick in officials getting in the way of play, and it's resulted in some really costly errors or plays.
Right. And the game is just the guys are huge and they're so fast, right?
Yes.
So why have another person or two on the ice to get in the way? It just doesn't, and they just can't see everything. It's like split-second decision on a hooking call in the playoffs. It's like, it's hard. It's so hard.
Yeah,
it really is. And, you know, I don't know how it would be leaving one ref on the ice, and just to be devil's advocate, as far as like you saying to explain to the coaches and this and that, like, I get that, but maybe we don't want that either, you know, or maybe the assistant coach has a headset on, like the refs can explain it to him. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I would say put him between the benches.
Yeah. I don't know. I just feel like, who knows how it could work? It's an idea, and I think they should think about it, because it's.
I don't think that's a bad idea at all.
Makes some sense.
I think Rangers and Hurricanes fans would agree with you, because I've seen them just barking. Both sides of that series have been barking about officiating that whole series, and a series that's a 3-1 lead for the Rangers right now could very easily be 3-1 Carolina. I mean, they've been so close, and yet the series is so far apart. It's been crazy. But
yeah, no, I agree.
It's just ridiculous. And I mean, everybody, it's funny. It's a double-edged sword, because people will go online and say, oh, the officiating's brutal. But then when it's their team, they're like, see, the refs screwed us tonight. But then when they're on the benefiting side of it, they're like, oh, that's fine. Don't complain about the officiating.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thought is like, it'll all even out, you know, you'll get some nights it's good, some nights it's bad, but I don't know. I just think there's still some simple issues they can fix. And, you know, and why, another thing that drives me crazy is why, you're back, Brian.
I know. Let's see how it goes. We'll see how long it lasts.
Is how you can't hook a guy's, you give a guy a little tug and it catches the bottom of his glove on his stick and you get a hooking penalty.
Yeah.
But when a shot goes from the point to the front of the net, it is like all out war zone. You can do whatever you want.
Yes.
Because you're making a play on the puck.
UFC, it's full UFC fighting in front, cross checks, anything go, holding the stick. You can do whatever you want when it's a rebound. And once again, I'm not saying they should take that away. Like, I think that's part of what's the fans love, when it's just chaos and there's, it's a shit show, but it just doesn't make sense where you get a little ticky-tacky little hook to the stick and then you get a rebound and a guy's like elbowing a guy in the head. And
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense to me. But
it's definitely the most dangerous place on the ice to be at any given point during a game.
Yeah, I would not want to be a hockey player's ribs or spine in front when they're standing in front of the net, because it does not look fun.
Before we continue, I do think that we need to stop and talk about our sponsors real quick. So they don't feel left out, especially because I know some of them are watching right now. So we're going to do that real quick. First up, as always, Fresh Ice is brought to you by Xenopucks. If you're not familiar with Xenopucks by now, you need to start watching the show more often. But they make a top-tier, high-quality off-ice practice puck. As you can see, it is not made of rubber. So I do not recommend getting hit by this. But it's designed to glide on virtually any off-ice surface. So whether it's, the floors in your house, whether it be carpet, hardwood, tile. I've used this thing on asphalt and concrete. I've heard of people using it on dirt and turf. Don't know why you'd want to do that, but you can. If you need a place to practice your stick handling or your shot, and ice time isn't always an option, this is a great alternative, especially if you're using something like a green biscuit or pretty much any other off-ice puck. I wouldn't recommend compared to this. This is top of the line. It's the same weight and size as a regulation puck. It does not get better than this. So if you're looking for something better, the green biscuit's just not cutting it for you, whatever the case may be, head over to xenopucks.com right now. Pick yourself up one of these. Check out their merch selection. They got some pretty good stuff on there. And be sure to follow them on Instagram at Xenopucks. That's XENO Pucks. Brian.
And Mark, since you're on our show, Xenopucks, part of our agreement with them is that any guests on our show will receive one of these. So after the show, we'll get your contact info, but they will send you one and you can try it out. And yeah, they're really cool. I mean, obviously my hands are as useful as cinder blocks when handling a hockey puck, but I think as a player you'll quite enjoy it. So we'll make sure they get you one of those. Now, if you're a fan of practicing off ice, of course, you can get products from our other sponsor, Hockey Wraparound. So they offer a wide range of products from things like hockey tape and equipment drying racks. But of course, their premier product is their blade protector or their blade wraparound. If you're practicing off the ice, with how expensive sticks are, you don't want to ruin the bottom of your blade or ruin that sweet tape job you got. So go to hockeywraparound.com/freshicepod and use the /fresh ice and use the code FreshIcePod. It'll get you 15% off your order. And that way you can make off-ice practice a breeze.
And in addition, though we do not have a tough look for this episode, because of who's on our show, and he's a former Red Wing, I have to shout out our other sponsor. Normally, we would do a tough look segment, but we're not going to. So our special sponsor for this show is Lightings Property Management out of Kenosha, Wisconsin. For all your lawn care, landscaping, and snow removal needs, give Lightings a call. They do it all. I just couldn't not shout them out on here, being that we have a former Red Wing on the show.
I like it.
Yeah, so they'll be pumped too. Brian, I'm going to let you take over for a second because, long story, the coffee ran right through me, so I'll be right back. I'm going to pull myself off the stage for a second.
Oh, goodness. Well, hopefully his coffee enema, it wasn't too bad, but nonetheless. So now I can ask you. So you've mentioned you've scouted for other organizations. Who are the other organizations you've scouted with?
So I finished my career over in Switzerland in 2011, and I was kind of like, geez, what am I going to do? You just don't. It's hard. You really don't. You don't know which direction you want to go. Do you want to stay in hockey? Get out of hockey? But anyway, I was fortunate enough that I got a call from. I sent my name out a little bit to some people that were in hockey that I knew, managers and whatnot. And I got a call from Tommy Fitzgerald, who's the GM of New Jersey now. Yeah. And I believe he was with Pittsburgh at that time. but he told me I was going to be getting a call from Scott Mellenby, who used to play for the Panthers and the Blues and whatnot. But he was an assistant GM with Montreal, and he said they were looking for a pro scout in the East, and preferably in the Boston area, and that's where I was. And quick phone interview, and now I've done 12 years scouting. So I was with Montreal for 5 years. And then I went to Buffalo for a couple of years, which was during the years of where there was some quick changeover anyway. So
yeah, there were some Sabres fans will know that there were the 2010s were dark days for sure.
Yeah. So that whole situation, I was excited just because of being, growing up in upstate New York. I thought it was going to be, a lot of fun, but it kind of went sideways quickly. So I was with them for 2 years, and then this is my 5th year with Minnesota. So
nice. Now, and it sounds like you mostly cover the East. So I assume you don't go to games at the XL Energy Center, or did you go to games at Bell Center or it was, I think, First Niagara Center then in Buffalo?
Yeah. So I was talking earlier about the territory and whatnot. So it kind of can change organization to organization. So with Montreal, I had the East, but not I didn't have the Florida team. So I would cover Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto. So I was up in Canada and had some teams there. And then it kind of shifted a couple other years, with Buffalo, maybe some different. So mostly anywhere in the East I've been to multiple times. Minnesota, the only times I go there are when we have meetings, basically. I rarely go out there just to scout a game. It's just there's no reason to, really. It's too far, and we have guys out there. But but I do see games there, and it's I can understand why people get jacked up because they do a good job. I think since Billy's taken over too, he's noticed some things as a fan that he wanted to be better. I think they have a new sound system in there, and they do some better things in between whistles and whatnot.
Oh my goodness. The game experience. I mean, even my wife and I, the first Wild game we went to was 3 seasons ago. And the difference between even then and now is just insane. It's such a fun arena to be in.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's huge. And that's what, I got the question earlier from Andy about the Bruins and their fans, how loud they were back when I was there versus now. And one thing I am always critical of the Bruins as far as in game is they really don't do anything. They just show people on the big screen, and then people go crazy, and that's it. They got music, the same music that they play, the same exact music that's been there for 15 years. And then they say, "Let's go Bruins," once a period. They're not they're diehard fans, and it's they would kill somebody for a win. But at the same time, they really don't, it's not a great building as far as in-game presentation.
That's one thing I can say that the Wild do really well. So my wife and I and one of our friends went to a Wild versus Coyotes game in January this season, and the Wild lost 6-0. It was a horrible game to be at, but you wouldn't believe it with any other fan base, but it was 6-0 in the third, and the whole arena still chanting "Let's go Wild." I'm like, really? All right, 2 things. This is really awesome, and also, what the hell is wrong with all of us right now? I mean, what are we doing to ourselves? So
yeah,
it's a ton of fun, but the fans bring it, and it definitely is a great building to be in. And I'm glad that, and obviously that's something I didn't know until you said it, but I'm glad that even as far as management goes, from top to bottom, the organization cares about the fan experience, because there are noticeably some arenas, and I think the biggest one that this is an issue with is Toronto is sometimes the place can kind of be a library, and I think the Leafs are probably the worst with that, where if the Leafs aren't playing well, it is you get to hear a pin drop in that arena.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it too, which isn't going to go away, at least in Toronto, is it's just corporate, right?
Yeah. Oh my God, all their best seats are corporate owned.
Top 15 rows, or the first 15 rows it's corporate, big money, and they just go and they sit on their hands and watch the game. A lot of them they're not really fans. So it's a tough thing, but they got to get that. I don't know, but you're right. They got to somehow get the others involved and get them, not so crazy. and not so crazy goal up, goal down, and they get I don't know, but
yeah, it's just weird. And you look at other arenas in Canada, because it's not like it's a Canadian thing. Like Montreal is one of the biggest fan bases in the league. That place is just covered in red from head to toe, and obviously they have a lot of corporate sponsors too. But the fans that are there, they love the Habs, and you look at Jets games, they love the Jets. So it's not just a criticism of Canada, but there's so many fan bases where it's like, why is this building quiet? I think Pittsburgh's another one too, where unless they get that horn going where they go, let's go Pens, and they honk the horn 3 times or whatever. That's another one where I'm like, there's a lot of places that miss out on doing a good fan experience.
Yeah, and I think you just got to be sorry, Andy. I know you got a point, so don't forget it. But I think they like this has nothing to do. I went to school for sports management, but it has nothing to do with that. I think it's more just because I see 150 games plus a year. But I'm always thinking like, why does like the Let's Go Bruins or Let's Go Wild, like why is it got to be Let's Go in the team? Like why can't they get creative enough to like come up with something else?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like not every team, but like
right.
I don't know. There has to be some originality there. There has to be something else out there instead of Let's Go Bruins. And I'm not using them as a bad example. I'm just saying that's how it is. Like,
yeah. Everybody's got their same generic chants. I will say Nashville probably does the best with coming up with some unique chants.
Yes.
And the infamous "You suck, it's all your fault."
Yeah.
I think that's a tough one to beat.
It is. I have to say, you mentioned the horn in Pittsburgh that when they do Let's Go Pens. My wife and I went and saw a Penguins game on New Year's Eve this year. That was our first time seeing a game in Pittsburgh, and I have nothing to lose by saying this, so I'm going to. Watching a game in Pittsburgh is the most boring experience I've ever had at a hockey game.
Oh man, Andrew, I would hate to be Andrew's inbox right now.
I don't care. I'm going to say it. First of all, just looking at the arena, it's one of the most bland looking sporting arenas I've ever seen in my life. The inside, first of all, getting to it, you're walking to it, and no matter what direction you go, it's uphill because it's in Pittsburgh. Yep. So there's that. There's like 9 levels to it. In the sense of getting to the 3rd level of the arena, you have to go up like 9 different escalators.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know, just the game presentation there isn't as good. I feel like there's hardly any fan experience there. Like Nashville has fan experience down to a science there.
Yeah, they got bands playing, they got everything going.
Yes. And Boston's got it down to an experience too. Now it does help. And I'm saying this as a Bruins fan, that people from Boston are insane at hockey games. So that helps a lot too. But Pittsburgh, they just don't have anything going. The building, the inside, the exterior is bland. It's that one of those open concept arenas. And I am sure you've been there. I mean, you can see the concourse from inside the bowl. Like, I don't know. It's just
Minnesota's got that too. I mean, I don't know. Maybe in Pittsburgh, they just got a little like, not comfortable, but they've had Crosby and Malkin, and they just want to they don't want to change too much because it's that same group. I don't know, but I'm with you. I think you got to stay on your toes, and you got to, keep the fans engaged as much as possible.
That's one thing I think the Wild do well is they have, first of all, they have one of the most, exciting mascots in the league. He's always coming out, always banging the drum, always trying to hype up the crowd. But in between whistles, they always have the guy throwing out T-shirts at the crowd. Like they're always doing something. And I think that's an important part is keeping the fans engaged. And again, for a team like the Bruins or a team like the Penguins, where there's history of them being good, there might not have to be that level of focus. But I do want to ask you this before I forget too, Mark. A lot of NHL players get asked this. What was your favorite building to play in on the road? Like, where was your favorite place to go? I know there's stories of maybe some places having a bad locker room or not a lot of good facilities, but what was your favorite to go to?
Oh man, that's hard. I know, like as far as which building I was had my best games in for some reason, like I was St. Louis, and I didn't play there a ton. But for some reason that building, I don't know if it was the blue seats or I have no idea why, but I always felt confident there. And things just always seemed to go well. And they had pretty good fan base too. They were pretty good. But so as far as playing, I would say, playing in success, it would be St. Louis. But as far as like just being in awe and being like growing up, and it would probably be Edmonton. Like, I'm just like, wow, this is where Gretzky, like that.
Yeah.
For me, it's probably one of those places. So that would be number one for me.
Speaking of players that were some of the best to ever play the game, I think it's also worth mentioning that, granted, they were earlier in their careers, but yeah, I'm sure at one point or another you shared the ice with Sidney Crosby and or Alex Ovechkin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely those two I remember having some shifts against, for sure. Yeah. I'd say the biggest vivid memory from Ovechkin was he was coming up. He must have grabbed the puck deep in his end, and I was kind of I don't know what you'd call it, playing like zone or whatever, but I was like on my heels, and he's coming at me. And I think all I did was, like, for some reason, I like did like a little fake and put my stick down on the ice laterally, kind of hoping he was going to maybe run into it or something. And he just blew by me like it was nothing.
Oh, no.
So I just can't. It's one of those memories that never goes away. And then the other one with Crosby, he was young, and I took a few faceoffs against him. And
oh boy,
I can't remember. I'm not gonna. I don't know if I won or lost. I don't think he was very good, actually. Back when he was young, he wasn't good at faceoffs. He's really learned to become a good faceoff guy. But I remember him like bitching to the refs or the linesmen about how he drops the puck.
Yeah.
and I remember saying one game, I was like, "Will you just shut up and just play the game or something like that?"
That's
like,
awesome.
Whoa.
Gave him a little chirp. I gave him a little chirp, but this was before he was really famous. I mean,
Sidney Crosby whining about something? That's unheard of.
Definitely something I think he's gotten better at, but I just love that that you look Sidney Crosby in the face and tell him to shut up and play.
That's incredible.
Like, we all knew he was going to be amazing. He was going to be one of the best players ever, but it was like, to me, I was just like, you're a young kid, like, just shut up and just play. Like, you'll earn your stripes, and you can yell at the refs and talk to them down later on in your career. And I guess, who am I to say it? I mean, I got 100 games under my belt is all, and who am I to say that to Sidney Crosby? But I don't know. I didn't think about it. It just came out. It just kind of.
I mean, sometimes you got to put, regardless of what their potential is, somebody's the new guy every time and has to be put in their place, and that doesn't just apply in hockey. That's everywhere.
So, anyway, those are my two memories of Sid and Noe.
That's incredible. Man.
All right. I want to go kind of off the page here now, because I just saw a tweet from Elliot Friedman that blew my mind. And Mark, this will probably kind of be like, holy shit for you as a player. So the PWHL is in their playoffs right now, the Professional Women's Hockey League. Boston and Montreal had a triple overtime game last night. Boston comes out with the win in triple OT. But Aaron Ambrose, who plays for Montreal last night, recorded 61 minutes and 33 seconds of ice time in a 2-1 loss. That is absolutely insane.
What?
That's how many overtimes was it?
3 overtimes. So essentially, she played 2. So that'd be the equivalent of a forward playing over half an hour in a regulation game, really, if you add it out. But 61:33 of ice time. Mark, as a player, I mean, do your legs tremble at the thought of skating for that long in one game?
Yeah, it's I played in a few longer games in college, maybe one when I was in Grand Rapids, I think. But yeah, I can't, like, just because your brain goes, right? Like, your brain starts seizing up. You got it seemed like you'd have like 12 to 15 seconds in the beginning of your shift, like in the second overtime, and then your brain goes, and it's kind of like, and then your legs go, and you're like, oh God. And then if you get caught out there over 35 seconds, then you're really screwed, and you're just praying. So to play that line, I'm assuming she was a defenseman.
I think she is a defenseman. I think I had that mixed up, but either way,
at least she, doesn't have to go up and down quite as much as a forward. So there's a little bit of a benefit there, but still, I mean, that's
a long time.
That's a battle. So
congratulations to her. Too bad they lost.
I know that's crazy. But yeah, definitely somebody replied to the tweet and said that's some insane cardio. I think that's an understatement.
There's no training for that.
I gotta ask too. All right. So ultimately, who do you have winning the cup this year? Whether it's biased or unbiased.
Yeah, no, it's not. There's no bias at all. I said in the beginning, I picked like Colorado or Vegas. I thought would win it. I'm kind of hoping Dallas can upset them because I do like Dallas's team.
Sorry, Brian.
Yeah, it hurts.
But I do. I like it. I like Dallas. I like Jimmy Nill was my assistant GM in Detroit. Like just a super guy. So
it's a great
if I have
hockey
to
mind.
Pardon?
I said he's a great hockey mind from all accounts. I've never heard anybody say anything bad about him.
Yeah, he's a great man. So if I have to pull for someone, I'm kind of pulling for him. But anyways, I'll stick with my pick with Colorado, and we'll see what happens.
Awesome. All right, I said 3 months ago Florida's winning the cup this year, and I'm dying on that hill. Yeah, so especially if they keep playing like they are now.
Yeah,
I took the Rangers in my bracket, and they're so far with the exception of last night. I mean, really, they have showed no signs that they can do it.
Yeah, it's been impressive, truly. And not only Shesterkin, like Shesterkin's been great, but it's not like you're like, wow, he's winning them every game. You know what I mean? They're showing up, they're scoring goals, and he's making the save. So it's a full team effort from them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Pretty impressive.
Now, let's see. Hang on. I just lost my notes there. I know you guys. I want you guys to have a moment to talk about the Warrior for Life now as well. We didn't get a chance to mention it on the last show, but I figure now is a perfect time before we go into our last topic.
Yeah, I know you had Bob on. I don't know when that was. A couple weeks ago, a few weeks ago. Yep. So we don't need to go into too much detail, but definitely worth mentioning. I've never been an ambassador for anything, so being an ambassador for an organization like the Warrior for Life Fund it's truly been an honor, and just to be a part of that. And it's kind of been strange since I've retired. I don't know, it's something with the military, and I don't know, I've kind of been definitely a little more, but just interested in kind of, I don't know, just more respect. I think the older you get, you just respect everything that they go through, and you watch all these movies, and but they're movies. But at the end of the day, for a lot of them, it's real life, and and when you really put yourself in their shoes and what they have to go through, it's incredible, and just a lot of respect for them. So anyways, when I was asked to be more involved with the Bruins alumni and started playing more games with them, I think it was about 5 years ago, I was asked potentially to play in this game with some Navy SEAL guys, and they were throwing around Warrior for Life Fund, and I had no clue what anything really was. I was just like, you know what? Like, I was down on the list, I think, because they were trying to get guys like, Terry O'Reilly and Rick Middleton, all these big time Bruins guys, and but sure enough, guys couldn't make it, and I kind of made the cut to play in this game, and it was going to be Bruins alumni versus Rangers alumni. One game in Boston, and then the next night down at MSG, and there was going to be some Navy SEALs there, some playing on each team, and so that's kind of where it all started. And got to talk to Ryan Crowley, who's the president of Warrior for Life Fund. That's where I met him, and things kind of just they kind of skyrocketed from there as far as my involvement and my want to be more involved, and then meeting guys like Bob Pizzini and so many wonderful people down in Virginia Beach. I've been down there. I've got to skate with some SEALs, and it just is, for me, it's been a perfect purpose. Like scouting's great. I'm involved with the game and this and that, but I don't have a lot of interaction with players. I can't go down and say, hey, you need to maybe work on this, or you know what I mean. So I don't have that in my life, and this coming along was a perfect fit, because it was hockey, it was Navy SEALs, getting them on the ice to bring a smile to their face, and in some cases maybe save their lives. It gives them an outlet. It gives them an outlet. They go on the ice, they skate a couple times a week, an hour at a time, and they're in the locker room and they're having a beer, whatever they're doing, and it just kind of gets their mind away. Some are retired, some are still active. So it just, I don't know, it hit home, and it's been a great fit, and I'm honored to be a part of it. And being an ambassador, I'm trying to, raise a little bit of money. It's not my thing necessarily, is going door to door, not a go-getter in that sense, but certainly, have a big enough contact list where I can send out the link and hopefully get some donations here and there and keep it rolling and just try to help these guys out as much as I can.
Nice.
I can't say how much that means. I'm not one to really broadcast it these days as much as when I got out, but I don't really talk about it a lot now. But, I was in the Army myself. I did a combat deployment to Afghanistan in 2012. And aside from myself, I mean, we had, I'm not going to go into detail because ultimately it's nobody's business, but we had a very intense deployment as far as combat goes. And, we had injuries, we lost a couple people, and it was a very rough adjustment process for, I think, all of us coming home.
Yep.
And what you guys do for veterans and their families is just, it's something that I can't put into words as to how much it means to other veterans. And like I said, as someone who had struggles myself, and you brought up a valid point that something as simple as this, playing hockey with these guys or just getting these guys out on the ice, while you may not realize it, that could be the one thing that saves their life, because so many go through the struggle of feeling helpless and alone in the world after they transitioned into civilian life. And it's a simple act, just as a hockey game, could be what they need to turn it all around. So
and from there they join a league, or because that's what they're doing down there. They got these different leagues for these guys, and in the combat part of it, like you said, that's the ultimate, what you're witnessing and all that. You got to bring that home and whatever. But even the ones that aren't, and just I think about, I've already told you, when I was done playing, it was scary. Like nothing compared to with the military. Scary with the military, but like it's scary because you just don't have you don't have a path, and there is some anxiety and like, what am I going to do? And
absolutely.
It's very similar to the military, whether you're in combat or whether you're behind a computer or whatever. Like eventually it ends for you guys. So like, and girls, but like, having this program now, and Ryan's actually opened this performance center down there where it doesn't have to be hockey either. Say you really just don't like hockey, you don't want to do that, you can go to this performance center, show up, knock on the door, and be like, hey, listen, I'm just looking for something to grab onto, right? And they have people there now that are going to point fingers and set you up with different avenues and paths. So it's just really cool, so it's a correlation of retiring from any job and having to find something else. But in obviously with the military, it's ramped up another level. And hopefully, like you said, if it's not saving lives, it at least gets people out of that funk or out of that trench.
Giving them a purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
And on behalf of myself and the veteran community, thank you to all of you for what you guys do for veterans. That's not something that goes unnoticed or unappreciated. And I'm very happy to say too that after having Bob on the show, I've been speaking with him, and Warrior for Life is doing an event coming up in July that my wife are going to head out to Virginia Beach for and check.
Are you going to go down?
Yeah, we're going to go down.
Perfect. Then I'll get to meet you face to face.
Awesome.
I'll be down there. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to have to try and rope Brian into it, get him to come out there with me, because that's going to be incredible. And full disclosure too, I'll get to meet Bob for the first time. The way we ran into Bob was Bob's from Wisconsin too, and he and our mom grew up together. They've known each other since grade school, and she was like, "You should really talk to Bob Pizzini," because she bought me his book when I started my job here in Cleveland, and I read it. And she goes, "Well, he's a huge Bruins guy. You should talk to him. He's a really nice guy." And I mean, ultimately, it's led us to this point. So, I mean,
here we are.
Thank you to Bob. Thank you to you. Thank you to our mom. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I've noticed too, I mean, there's different, at least in the Northeast, you do see some different avenues and different paths for the military. And there's some hockey teams up in Maine and New Hampshire. And so, this is one, this is just one organization, but I feel like there's more popping up, which is it's a great thing. I know Muggsy Malone, it's got something going in Pittsburgh. I just started following his thing. He's playing some games with some retired military and stuff. So nice. I think it's catching on, with the hockey world. And I think the NHL hopefully will grasp onto it as well. So, hopefully that's for me. It's just a perfect fit, because the SEALs that I've met, and now I met you, and I met some other, obviously, other branches.
And I'm no Navy SEAL, so
no, but you guys are all kind of the same. You're kind of like hockey players. You fit right in, and most of the time you like to joke around and have fun, and you know what I mean. Yeah. But at the same time, you like to win, you like to defeat, you like to, you know what I mean. So it's just like I said, for me, it was an absolute perfect fit.
Absolutely.
And it's just been, so far, it's been just great.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. And now I'm looking forward to meeting you in person. That'll be really cool.
It'll be good.
I know Brian's got one more topic that he wanted to cover, and then we can get out of here, because it is Mother's Day and we all have important women in our lives. So
the last thing I want to mention, and we'd be remiss as a hockey show if we didn't mention, the San Jose Sharks win the draft lottery, and all signs point to them, of course, drafting Macklin Celebrini with the first pick. My question for you, Mark, as a scout, now obviously you're a pro scout, not an amateur scout, but when these young kids come into the league, I mean, I am trying to find the right way to phrase this question, but you see a young guy come in like McDavid, like Eichel, like Matthews, and as a guy who played yourself, I mean, what's it like watching these kids come in, and it seems more and more these days that kids are coming into the league pretty much equipped with everything they need to play at 18, 19 years old, where even as recent as 15 years ago, most kids weren't breaking into the league until they were 22, 23.
Yeah. And I think the salary cap has benefited some of these kids, to say that the league is definitely younger than what it was. The average age, I feel like it was 32 back in the early or late 90s and early 2000s. It was like, I know the teams I was on, I think the average age was like 33. You were in your prime at like 29, 30. Right. Now with the cap and how you got to work the numbers and stuff, that age has definitely come down. So, and once again, I'm not saying that these star players, the Celebrinis and the Bedards, wouldn't have been able to play in the league, back then too. It's hard to tell, but I think the fact that the age has crept the other way, where now you're in your prime at 26, 27, and there's more and more 22, 23-year-olds in the league than there was, 15 years ago. Now, that being said, these players are amazing. They truly are amazing. I do worry sometimes with the support staff that they have around them, like Bedard in Chicago, like the losing that you have to do. But I guess you can look back at Stevie Yzerman, and he was, I don't know what his first year was, if it was early.
The 90s. Red Wings were horrible in the late 80s. So yeah.
He had to go through that painful process of, and kind of by himself, like Crosby, Malkin had each other, and Taves and Kane had, they had Keith, and, they kind of did it together. But it was like Yzerman did it himself. So I do worry a little bit, Celebrini if he goes to San Jose, he's not going to have much around him for a while, so is that going to just beat him down, where, I don't know, he's not going to be the player that he could be? I don't know. I hope not. I hope not. And I hope San Jose does, some other good drafting. I know they got the Will Smith kid at BC. So right there alone, at least he's got a partner to go up and down the ice with. But no, it is impressive, the skill level. But those guys, those generational guys, are, maybe I'm using that too loosely, because maybe, Celebrini's not that. But you can just tell. I watch a little college, and just how smart these guys are. A lot of the guys are so skilled. The young players are all way more skilled than most players were in the 90s, but they don't all have it here. But you see with Bedard and the Celebrini kid, they're just so smart. They just know where to go, and they know where to go with pucks. And you see them, you can watch them play 3 shifts, and you're like, wow, there's just jumps off the page at you.
My favorite example of this is Connor McDavid, and it's easy to use this. I don't want to say as a crutch, I mean, he's best player in the league probably by a mile, but you watch him and you watch him come into the league, and Edmonton wasn't great when he came into the league. Yeah. I mean, that's no secret, but he comes out his first season after the injury, comes back, and since then he's been outstanding. But even now it seems like he's found another level in his game. He starts off as a young kid, and he's got the talent to shoot out the lights and make all these great plays. But I saw this comparison a couple months ago, and it was Gretzky was always a really good player, but once he figured out his passing game and his playmaking game, it elevated him to another level. And it seems like McDavid is starting to hit that tier, and Eichel is hitting that tier, and those guys are starting to figure out that, you know, if they're going to have two guys covering me, I'll have an open teammate. And the ability that these young kids have to figure out who's the open guy now and just sling the puck there and know it's going to land on somebody's table blows my mind.
Yeah, and I think you hit it. You hit a good point there, is that I think a lot of these guys through their whole life, they did a lot of it on their own. You know, when they're 10, 12, 13, they just went through everybody, went down the ice and scored. You know, and it didn't mean they didn't know how to pass, but they either didn't have the players on their team to get them the puck, or they weren't open or whatever. And like you said, as these teams have gotten better, Edmonton's gotten a little bit better. Eichel's insulated now with a much better team. So there's guys that he doesn't even have to think. He knows that the guy's going to be open. You know what I mean? So like you're right. It all comes full circle. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I can tell you this and this is just another scouting thing that we go through. I'm not really making the decisions on this, but one of the deciding factors with these young kids, and if they're gonna pull them out of junior or wherever and put them right into the NHL, it's usually, are they physically ready? You know, is their body physically ready or not? Because if it's not, Hughes in New Jersey, like his first year was tough. Like he was getting
Yeah, there was people talking, is he a bust or is he not? Which I thought was a little much, but
but he may not have been, just because he's not physically mature. He wasn't physically mature enough, and he's always going to be a smaller player, but he's going to put on just like man type of, you know, a little bit of man weight. You know what I mean? And Connor McDavid, I mean, he can skate like the wind. So even if he was a little thin, he just had that dynamic skating. You know, where if Celebrini's he's a little thinner, doesn't have the dynamic skate. He's just got the brain. He's just so smart, you know, so it'll be interesting. But that's one of the things that I know management looks at as far as, are we going to pull this kid and put him right into the NHL with these monsters out there, with these Bill Guerins out there that want to, you know what I mean? So it's a big decision, because you don't want to screw up their development, you know. So and I don't think there's an exact science to it. It just depends what your roster is, how big the kid is he going to have someone to play with? So it's something I know that it's a tough decision for a lot of these teams.
Yeah, and you mentioned that, and it's funny you mentioned Bill Guerin, because the Wild had a player that they went through this with, Marco Rossi, last season. You know, he goes through the season, doesn't play a ton of games in the show, goes back to the AHL. It seemed like the prime focus for the team with him going into last offseason was, you know, he needs to bulk up. He's got to have a sturdier body, because he's not very tall. He's 5'9", which for a hockey player is pretty small. He stays in Minnesota this summer. He bulks up. He comes out and has an incredible rookie season this year. And so, I mean, I think you're right on the nose. And as a player, you would know better than anybody that conditioning can make or break you, because now Rossi comes in. He's one of the Wild's best centers in the system now. He's so much stronger on the puck. It doesn't look like he's in trouble in board battles. He even dropped the gloves this year after Kaprizov took a really bad hit. So, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. When these kids have all the skill in the world, but if you can't take a hit or if you can't win a puck battle, it's not always going to save your butt. Yeah,
no, it's a perfect example. It's a great example.
All right, man. What an episode this has been. This has been the coolest experience I've had in a long time with anything. Man.
This was pretty cool.
I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. This was incredible. Obviously, this won't be the last time we talk, especially if we're both going to the Warrior for Life event. Speaking of that, I did not say this earlier, but if you're watching and you want to help out, head over to the warriorforlifefund.org and make a donation today. It's good people for a good cause. That being said, Brian, do you have anything else you want to say?
No, I think this was an incredible experience. I think for the first 5-10 minutes, I was just so awestruck that we were talking to a player that I forgot what I was doing. So this has absolutely been an incredible experience, Mark. So thank you for making time, especially on Mother's Day. Thanks for making time to come on and talk some puck with us.
All good. Anytime. You guys got my email too. So if any, honestly, you want any scouting questions, like stuff, feel free. Anytime.
Awesome, man. If you don't mind hanging on for just a couple minutes after we stop recording, got some stuff to say real quick.
And get your info for getting you a Xena puck.
Absolutely.
I think you'll try this thing out and you'll be like, holy shit, this sucks.
I'm telling you, it's pretty damn good.
Nice.
With that being said, so this coming week, my wife and I are going to Florida. So Brian and I will still do a show this coming Sunday. I will be in Florida. However, the following Sunday, we will not be doing a show because I will be driving home from Florida. So if you're expecting a show 2 weeks from now, I'm sorry, but you will be disappointed for that day. So with that being, although I guess we could probably look into doing one on Memorial Day. We'll see. It's just going to depend what time we get back. So with that being said, I think we're all done here. I just want to say thank you to our sponsors. As always, they're very good to us. Thank you to Mark for coming on the show. This has been incredible. Thank you for Bob Pizzini for making this happen, bringing us all together. It's just been incredible. Bob's a great guy. With that being said, I think we are all done here. Unless anybody has anything they want to throw out.
Good.
All right, guys. That being the case, we will see you next Sunday. Take care and comb your hair.